You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody! Rio 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
We're going back to Brazil?
Yeah, essentially.
Awesome.
That's what it is. And it also means another episode of Don't F With the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the vegan correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. For those of you who don't know, what we do at Don't F With the Original is when a sequel comes out, we review the movie that started the franchise to gauge our expectations and talk a little bit about what we expect for the next movie. And in this case, obviously, that means we're going to review Rio 1, otherwise known as Rio.
Yeah, there was no number. You know, because I feel it's a pretty complete story. I think they didn't add the number there saying, you know, to be continued.
It wasn't Rio Episode 1.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is a movie that, to me, is more interesting in terms of where it comes from than what it actually is.
Interesting.
So, Rio, directed by Carlos Saldana, it's the story of a macaw that gets captured and transported all the way to the United States, and then gets lost and gets found by a little girl named Linda, and she grows up with him, and they become, like, they have a pet master relationship, obviously, but they, you know, what they're showing is that he's found a loving home in Linda.
Yeah.
And then one day, an environmentalist, he's a zoologist, I guess?
Ornithologist.
Oh, okay, there you go. Shows up to tell her that, well, look, his species is going extinct. We have a female. I found this male. We need to bring him to Rio in Brazil so that they can mate and continue the species. He actually says that they're the only ones left, and I'm like, well, then your species is dead, because two of one species is not enough, buddy.
Yeah.
So, worst scientist ever.
What about all the animals on Noah's Ark, man? Okay? Don't mess with... 2 is all you need. That's what the Bible tells us, alright? You're completely wrong on that. But yeah, keep going.
No, it's out in theaters too if you want to talk about it, you know?
No, it's all good.
So, they bring Blue, that's the name of the bird, to Rio. He's having trouble adapting. He never learned to fly, is one of the major things.
Yeah.
He meets the girl, and then some poachers come and kidnap them, and then they escape the poachers, and they end up chained together, and then the story sort of follows them to continue escaping the poachers who are still running after them, and get back to Linda, or get back to freedom, but except that they're chained together, and they're not getting along, except that they're destined to fall in love, because it's a cartoon, and that's how it goes.
Of course. And also animal instincts, come on, you know. It's just...
Yeah, well, actually, you know, like, there's plenty of animals that just don't want to mate with their keepers, I should say, or want them to mate with. Like, that happens with pandas all the time. They're like, mate, and the panda's like, fuck you.
Yeah, but pandas are lazy, so, you know, it's like, mate, maybe later, give me a break.
So, anyway.
No, I understand.
So what did you think of Rio?
It was a fun movie. I liked it. You really like the birds, you know. It's not like one of those kids' movies that I really hate, where, you know, the main character has like a fatal flaw and that causes all of the problems. No, you know, the problems are caused by an outside source. Mm-hmm. You know, everything would have gone fine if not for the outside source. So, you know, and then they have to overcome that. So that's really the kind of movie I like, kind of kids' movie I like. And, you know, all the characters are pretty fun. Even the bad guys are kind of goofy, kind of fun as well. So it's a great movie for kids, and I liked it.
Yeah, no, I think all of what you say is really sort of the strengths of the movie. What I like especially about this movie is sort of a different angle on the fish out of water sort of story, because it is sort of that, but at the same time it isn't treated that way. Like, what I find intriguing is that the original concept was a penguin.
Really?
Yeah, it was going to be a penguin who ends up in Brazil.
To mate with a macaw? That makes no sense.
Presumably that context was different.
Okay.
And then what happened is Happy Feet and a whole bunch of penguin movies and cartoons started coming out. So, you know, the studios were like, yeah, we're not doing penguin. Like, we're going to look ridiculous. We're going to be like one of a crowd. Like, it's just not, no, we're not sellouts. That's not what we're going to do.
Okay.
And so
But
they come up with this story that's a little bit, I find a little more organic, like less goofy, less high concept, you know?
Yeah. I don't know why they said that, because sellouts make a lot of money very often, but you know.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, when you're a smaller studio and you're just doing the sellout thing, you're picking up crumbs. You can't stand out.
That's true.
So, yeah, they changed it, and what I find interesting is that he changed it to something that became much more personal to him. He said in an interview that when he rewrote the story, he based it on his own life. Sort of Blue's journey is his journey of going back to Brazil and realizing that, like, he's now a true blue American, and he sort of lost touch with his roots, and he feels like an outsider, even though he's going back to the place where he was born.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you feel that in the way it's treated. I think it's such a clever way of doing a fish out of water story where you feel like, well, you should belong, and yet you don't, you know? And there's all kinds of lines like, he's like, oh, you're American. Well, you don't look American, which, you know, somebody who was born in Brazil, then went to the US, and then came back to Brazil, that's the sort of thing they would probably encounter all the time.
That's probably true, yeah.
You know? At the end, mild spoiler alert, but we get to see children. I'm not going to say whose children, but it's the same number of children as Carlos Saldana has with his spouse.
Okay.
And, you know, there's a sort of sanctuary for birds that's called the Bluebird Sanctuary or something like that. Like, the studio that released this, which he co-founded, is Blue Sky Studios. So again, like, you can see that he really input a lot of his life into the movie.
Okay.
This feels like a very personal tale.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Probably should have tried to spot other stuff while watching the movie. It's like, oh, that could be from him, or that could be from, you know, I could see that now.
Yeah. And the whole thing with him not being able to fly is sort of a metaphor with him maybe not being able to speak the language as well as he should. Or certainly in the case of Carlos Saldana, I'm assuming he still speaks Portuguese really well, but maybe his children don't. And, you know, and maybe his children faced that.
Or maybe it's just a remnant of the penguin story. You know, you don't know. It's a possibility as well. You know?
No, but I find that it's, you know, the flying thing, you can relate it to the idea of, like, just being out of touch with the culture. And you know. Yeah.
Exactly. At one point in the movie where, you know, they get free and all the birds are, like, celebrating and flying in the air, and you can see Blue. He's really kind of like, well, like, you know, it'd be great to be part of that, but really he can't, so he's really down on it, and that was, you know, kind of touching, you know, and I can kind of see where, you know, you're at a point, everybody speaks a different language, and you're like, hey, everybody speak English here, hey, you know, what's the deal, you know, it's kind of lame that way.
Yeah, no, and even if it's not a language barrier, it might be a pop culture reference thing, or, you know, you go back to your family in Brazil and they all have these stories that, because they grew up together and you didn't grow up with them anymore because you're in the United States.
Yeah.
And they're sharing these memories and you're like, no, this is not fun for me, I'm out, you know.
Exactly.
And I think anybody can relate to that. I think kids who are immigrants or who have family abroad, they don't even need to be immigrants, can probably relate to that in a much more profound way than, like, you're the penguin and he doesn't like heat, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that penguin story, that would have been terrible, honestly. Let's just take something that lives in the cold and have him go in the hot. That's just so corny, so lame. I mean,
it really is.
Here, there's something special about this, you know? It's a good thing all those other penguin movies came out to just have them change their mind on that, because, yeah, that'd been terrible.
And it encourages the idea of America, the United States, as a melting pot as well, because even though he's born in Brazil, he grew up in Minnesota, so he views himself as American, and he fits in America. He has a happy, loving home in America. Yeah. You know? So there's all these concepts there that I like a lot that for me make the movie a lot more valuable than I think it would have been if it had been a less personal story, you know?
Linda, her owner, also has her story. You see them, you know, it's not just, you know, the bird that, you know, likes her owner. She loves that bird. You can see it there, you know, establishing shots at the beginning. You know, she grew up with the bird. The bird is always in every picture with her. The bird takes centerpiece of her prom picture instead of her date. You know, it's really, you know, the bird is her life. And then when she loses it, you know, she goes kind of crazy and she's looking for it. And, you know, she goes through a bunch of crazy stuff just to go and get that bird, you know. So it's good that, you know, there's also that story as well that takes place And of course, humans are not as interesting as birds to kids. So of course, that story is like takes maybe a quarter of the time as opposed to 3/4 for the birds. But I still like it that it's there. And it's not just her moping and crying on the sidewalk and it's like, I want my bird. And and eventually the bird comes to her. It's something completely different.
And the bad guys you mentioned, they're fun.
Yeah.
You got a poacher who's like sort of an evil mastermind, and his sidekick who's a bird, but like not in a Gilbert Gottfried sort of way.
No. Enough of that. Seriously.
And he's sort of really menacing. And they give him a backstory about him being a former star and really wanting attention for himself only, so he does this shit just to get rid of the other birds who get attention, which is such a weird motivation.
I know.
And then they have like 2 henchmen who are like complete morons and sort of lovable.
Or just interested in going to Carnival, and that's about it. They're so happy they're using this float as a decoy to have the birds cross the city, and it's like, no, they're just so happy they have a float and they're participating in Carnival, even though the float is terrible compared to the rest of them. They're having fun. That's what's happening, They're so incompetent that the boss leaves the bird in charge, That's how bad it is.
Which I love that bit where the henchmen are getting scolded by the bad guy, and he goes like, well, if you love your bird so much, why don't you put him in charge? I was like, that's exactly what I'm doing. And the other guy goes like, stop giving him ideas. Which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I like also that, like, clearly Carlos Saldana knows Rio. Because it's not just like, here's a place. Like, you can see that there's a geography there. When they go into the small streets, they go up up on top of rooftops when they follow the orphan, or when they go when they're in the sky and then go back down from the jungle to the city onto the beach. Like, there's a real sense of like, this is how the city is structured.
Yeah.
And you get a sense of geography. And that makes the environment feel so much more real.
And lots of drawing of, Christ the Redeemer as well. I think he loves that statue or something.
Well, it is the sort of a very iconic place. Like, that's how you recognize Rio.
Yeah. But still, it's like, all right, that statue again. All right, cool. It at least seems like all the excuse he can have to put that thing there is like, oh, that's interesting. I think he really likes that statue.
I do feel that it's a very touristy version of Rio, though.
That's possible, yeah.
Like, I do feel that Rio probably has a lot more depth as a city. And he does touch on it, in fairness. Like, he has an orphan who lives on top of those sort of, like, slum rooftops and all that. So he does touch on it. Like, he does say, like, that exists. But he doesn't really spend a lot of time on it. Probably because it's a kid's movie aimed at American children.
Yeah.
And parents would lose their shit if people are like, your movie showed my kids reality and stuff.
Yeah.
Your movie asked my kid to empathize with foreigners and their situation. How dare you? But
yeah.
So that's probably why that was avoided. But I do find that's too bad, because he comes awfully close to really giving us a real picture of the city he grew up in,
Yeah. Kids would probably not mind that much. It's the parents that would, You have to protect your kids from everything negative, So, no.
Yeah.
Protect from that. So. No,
I think a kid, like, if the parents just let him watch it, and saw, a full picture, he'd go like, oh, is that how they live in Brazil? It's like, oh, that's hard. That sounds hard to me. And that would be pretty much it. Like, they wouldn't be traumatized by it or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
They would probably be a little bit more grateful for what they have, actually, and be a little bit less entitled.
Oh my God. That's a good point.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, what you're saying makes sense, is all I'm saying. Pretty much. I do like Blue, the main character, who basically can't fly, but he tries to make it up with all his, physics and science stuff, because he's been he's been living in a bookstore, and he's basically reading all those physics books and everything, and I thought that was interesting,
Yeah, you would relate to that, wouldn't you?
Indeed, I like it fine that they're actually trying to show, intelligent, main characters, and not just, he's average. He's not too intelligent, because being too intelligent makes you kind of a square and lame, It's like, no, now being intelligent is kind of cool, which is a good thing, so good for them.
Yeah, and actually, that's his strength, because he doesn't have the instincts that he should have as a bird, because he has been uprooted, so he can't fly, he doesn't know the lay of the land anymore. He's he's in a very real way handicapped throughout the entire movie because he can't fly, but he makes up for it by being this bird who's comfortable with technology and with human tools, so he can figure out what to pull and how to create devices.
Yeah.
And, he's comfortable with physics, essentially. And he gets out a lot of the situation because he understands how these things work.
Mm.
I thought it was really cute, too, at the beginning where, like, she's banging against the cage, like, why are you going? We were trying to get out, like, why are you stupid? He's like, he just opens the cage because he knows what a cage is and how a cage functions.
Exactly. Oh, it's just a simple lock, and he just clicks it up.
The voice acting is really nice, too, I have to say. Jesse Eisenberg plays Blue, and what I like is that I didn't recognize his voice. Like, I started the movie and I knew it was him, because I read up a little bit on it before watching the movie, and I forgot that it was him even as it was going on.
Yeah, I can't even see it just going back listening to what it is. I can't spot his voice, really. There's nothing familiar about his voice in the Blue character.
Mm.
At the Anne Hathaway bird, Jewel, I can kind of see.
You can see it a little bit, especially when she sings.
Yeah. The thing is, this cartoon, doesn't do what the big studio does and basically have their characters look like the actors. Mm. So, it's like, oh, look, your original looking, characters that are not exactly like who you expect the voice to be, So, although it would have been interesting to have to see, anthropomorphic, human-like birds that look like the actors. That would have been weird, but, interesting to see at the same time. See how they would have done with that.
We came close because after Rio came out and was somewhat of a success, Pixar scrapped their project to do a bird movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so we probably would have had anthropomorphized birds if not for Rio.
Wow.
And yeah, the minor voice talent also is a lot of fun. I particularly was impressed by Tracy Morgan as a dog who is sort of constantly fighting off his instincts to kill the birds. Like, he's a sweet character. He's a friend to the birds, but that's not his nature, so every once in a while he'll say something really disturbing.
Yeah. And yeah, he's fun. It's not the usual. It's not Tracy Morgan playing his usual self. It's like, oh, I'm dumb. It's like, no, he's dumb, but in the different, like, ignorant kind of way that Tracy Morgan likes to play his characters. So it's actually pretty fun to see Tracy Morgan expand his horizon, even though it's only a cartoon.
Yeah, but, like, it made me realize, I was like, maybe Tracy Morgan should do more voice acting than just, because, you're right, like, when he does a movie, or certainly 30 Rock, it's just, like, that random guy who does random things.
Yeah.
And, seeing him just do the voice thing, I was like, oh, he's really charming, and I barely recognize him. I thought maybe he was a Hispanic actor, actually, for a while.
That's true. He kind of sounds like it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I want to see more Tracy. Well, I want to hear more Tracy Morgan in cartoons because that's working out really well.
Yeah, that's true.
They also had Will.i.am and Jamie Foxx as a singing bird duo.
Yeah.
I thought Will.i.am was fine.
It was okay. I did like the part in the movie where Jamie Foxx says that his singing sucked and let me take over. That was kind of fun.
That's not what happens, though.
That's what happened in my head. Okay.
For those of you who haven't seen the movie, the context is that the birds are trying to set the mood so that Blue and Jewel, that's the girl, macaw, sort of get it on. And there's a toucan played by George Lopez. There's a yellow canary played by Jamie Foxx, and there's another bird that I don't know what type of bird he is, played by Will.i.am.
Yeah, fat bird. That's all I remember.
He's red.
I think it's a red cardinal or something.
Oh yeah, that sounds right. And so the toucan goes like, "Hey, you set the mood, you singing birds." And so the red bird, played by Will.i.am, goes like, "All right," and he sings like this most vile, like really explicitly sexual for kids. So like, don't worry if you're a parent and you want to shield your children from that. It's just he evokes sexual explicitness without actually doing it.
Yeah,
which is actually a nice writing there.
Yeah,
but and then the yellow canary goes like, "What the hell are you doing? This is just gross and wrong."
Yeah. Basically, I don't know. I see it as more as like, no, your singing sucks. He just moved on. But that's how I enjoy. That's how I choose to enjoy that scene. Right?
I am not of the people who feel will.i.am needs to be dumbed on all the time. I think he's a fine music producer. It's pop music, yes. If you don't like pop music, you're probably going to find his stuff terribly repetitive and shallow. But that's the genre he's in.
Yeah. That's true.
But I thought as a voice actor, he's fine, not amazing or anything, but like you can tell that I knew it was a recording artist, not from his talent in singing, but from the flatness of his line delivery. I thought maybe it was CeeLo actually, until I saw the credits. Like, oh, will.i.am, yeah, recording artist. That's why it sounds so flat.
That's weird because he was great in or X-Men Origin Wolverine.
He's fine. I wouldn't say he's great.
That was sarcasm. Again, kind of flat. So
Yeah.
It's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's not his job. That's not his main job. He shouldn't be acting so much, to be honest.
Well, no, that's not his job. If you're getting hired to do something, that's now your job.
Yeah,
so you should be.
Well, that's why I feel comfortable criticizing him for being flat.
I also kind of had weird problem with bird smuggling. They did have a giant ass plane that would cost a lot of money. I think a lot more than the money they would make from smuggling those birds. I'm not sure how that operation works. I mean, I know they have smuggling to do, but it was just weird.
I assumed that they rented the plane, that it wasn't theirs, to be honest.
Still very expensive.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. But it's true that those birds, get kind of expensive now because they're getting more and more rare because people want them as pets, even though, they are wild animals. I don't have problem with dogs and cats as pets, but when you're getting wild animals as your pet, there starts, to be somewhat of a line there that I don't quite like.
Well, dogs and cats started off as wild animals and we bred them into pets.
Yeah.
And the way you breed them into pets is by letting them reproduce when they're pets.
Yeah.
And we don't do that with birds. Birds that are pets never meet other birds.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah. Even those macaws, those blue macaws there are extinct in the wild. It's pretty much, now there are probably 50 left on Earth. And they're basically surviving because they're being reproduced by the people who own them. But yeah, it's just, again, because they were just captured because they made fantastic bird to own. I mean, the giant, magnificent blue bird in your apartment, that's probably looks great, but it's like...
Well, yeah, and they're moderately docile, apparently. So.
Okay, that too. So yeah, but it's like, it's not where the bird should be, really.
I always feel worse for birds because you need space to fly.
Yeah.
And so unless you have a huge house, that feels a little bit cruel.
Also, the wing clipping, it's also kind of, well,
oh, yeah, they do that. It's true.
I don't want them to fly, so I'm just going to clip the tip of the feathers on their wings so they don't fly. It's like, if you're first of all, you're owning the bird now and you're preventing it from flying. It's just, I don't know.
You're killing a species.
Yeah, those are expensive, so you own one bird. You're not going to own two, or you're not going to probably meet up with people that have, you have a parrot, you want to make baby birds with him. It's like, that's not going to happen,
She go to the Poke Center and you...
Yes. It's the daycare. The Poke Center heals your Pokemon. The daycare is where you can breed. Get your Pokemon references straight.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been years since I've played that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of video games, interesting little tidbit. There's an Angry Birds Rio where you throw characters from Rio at green pigs.
But don't the birds explode in that game?
Yeah, well, the Rio ones don't, but so you have the Angry Birds that will, and when you throw a Rio bird, it doesn't explode. It does something else.
Oh, okay.
So the two blue macaws, Joel and Blue, when you throw them, you throw them both together in a ball, and then they'll spread out, and they're still chained together, so everything with the chain gets destroyed.
Oh, nice.
So it's actually really well integrated.
Okay.
So there you go, little tidbit.
That's nice. At least a video game based on the movie that doesn't suck. That would be a first.
Yeah, no, it's because they use a game engine that already exists.
Yes, exactly.
So overall, you would recommend it?
Yes, very easily.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I think it's a cute movie. Like, it's not my favorite movie in a world at all. It's sort of a little bit quaint. Like, it doesn't pop out to me.
Okay.
But there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of feeling in there, and honestly, if you're gonna let your kid watch a cartoon just to keep them entertained, I'd rather it be something like this than anything that's coming out these days, to be honest.
Yeah, and even, for younger kids, because I can say this, it's colorful as well,
Mm.
Even young kids that maybe would not even get the story, they'll see all those beautiful colors and then they'll be entertained. So, I don't even set an age limit of, lower age this much on this movie. It's like, no, just, 2-year-old kid will just love the colors and just be, transfixed on them because it is a very colorful, nice movie. And yeah, so it's for everybody.
Mm. Agreed. Alright, so let's talk about the sequel.
Yeah.
Rio 2, we saw the trailer separately, and we both had the same reaction going like, that new trailer's bad.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to Rio 2?
Not from the trailer, honestly. I was looking forward to it before I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, well, I'll see where this goes. The movie ends in Rio, and you get kind of a sense of what's happening, but, see into more detail of what's going to happen, especially with the relationship between the birds and the humans, I'd like to see more of that. Then, the trailer kind of, gives me the answer immediately to that, so it's like, okay, well, that's answered. I don't need to see the movie for that. And then the story that they're putting forward is like, nah, don't really care about that.
It's terribly sitcom-y.
Yes.
Is the story that they're putting forth. What the story they're putting forth is essentially Blue meeting Jewel's family and not being accepted.
Yeah.
And there are several issues that I have with that in terms of a storyline that they do often. Hollywood does this a lot where they do the thing where a white American character, and I realize he's a bluebird, but he represents the white American, even though he's supposed to be Hispanic American.
Yeah.
By the metaphor. And then, joins a foreigner family or immigrant family or an ethnic family, whatever you want to call it, depending on what movie.
Yeah.
And then is not accepted by that non-white family and has to struggle with that. And I hate it for two reasons. Because on the one side, it promotes the idea that white people are the real victims of racism.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
And I'm not saying that you can't be a victim of racism if you're white. Of course you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely you can. But it's
not the majority of racism that's happening right now in the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, it's not discrimination against white people that really is the majority. I'm sure it happens once in a while, but it's not the main one.
And that's the other flip side of it, is that, when you deal with discrimination towards a minority group, a protected base, then it's a drama. And then when a white person gets discriminated against, it's hilarious. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, so there's the flip side. Like, it's offensive to the people who are discriminated against, who are minorities usually.
Yeah.
And it's offensive also to white people because it sort of promotes the image that it's okay to discriminate against a white guy.
Yeah.
And that's not okay either.
No, it's like no discrimination at all is okay. But that's a good point as well. It's true that, discrimination against other races in movies, I've never seen that before. But yeah, it's always dramatic. But then, when the white guys discriminate against, it's high comedy. And it's like, no, they should be treated the same way, honestly. You should not discriminate based on anything. And it should all be not funny.
Yeah. So I have a huge problem with that trope to begin with. And so I am, like, really not looking forward to this.
I'm mostly seeing this as, like, Meet the Parents, which is a series of movies I was forced to watch and that I hated. I hated with a passion. At least, the name's bird is not Fokker, it's Blue, so they're going to remove all, the Fokker puns that, plague those movies. But, it's just, no, it was like, okay. I hope that's not the main part of the movie there. I've read there's going to be a subplot with, the humans getting into trouble, the birds as well, and, that might lead to something. But, yeah, from what I saw, it's just, like, Meet the Parents, and then they have kids, and one of them's fat. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
It didn't seem hilarious to me.
No, and I think what it comes down to, which was my initial thought as soon as I finished watching Rio, because like I watched Rio just for this podcast. So.
Yeah.
When the movie finished, I was like, I don't need a second one. Like, this said everything it needed to say, and it felt like a personal story. It felt, or I was like, if you continue it, how are you going to continue this journey that feels very close and again very personal? You're going to have to commercialize it.
Exactly, and that's what they did. It's like zany adventures in the Amazon. Like, okay, that doesn't seem like all like the first movie I saw, and that's not something I want to I want to watch, honestly.
I'm with you. The first trailer actually made me laugh. I think they kept a lot of the same characters. They added a small frog sidekick to the bad guy Cuckoo.
Oh, interesting.
And her lines are hilarious. But although there seems to be some funny elements in it, I think the driving force behind it is exactly the sort of thing that I reject animated movies for sometimes. It feels like that era where DreamWorks kept cribbing ideas from Pixar and just went like, we just need to release before it. I don't care what the story is. Fish in a car wash, Yeah. It feels like that level of material. And so I have to say I am not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
If you guys do decide to watch it this Friday anyway, because you got kids and you need to entertain them, because that happens.
Sometimes.
Do let us know in the comments, like, if we're wrong, if it turned out to be just as touching and as, like, sometimes moving. Like, honestly, Rio is sometimes moving.
Yeah.
As the original, we want to know, like, because we're just giving our impressions. Neither of us have seen Rio 2, so we're interested.
Yeah.
All right, then. Next week, we are talking about The Raid Redemption.
Cool.
Yeah. I know it came out this week and we were supposed to talk about it, but, we can only watch one movie at a time. Talk about one movie per week.
Yeah, we can only watch a movie at a time. It's getting kind of complicated, Turn your head all the time, 2 TVs in the same room, conversations overlapping. It's annoying.
It's hard, is what I'm saying.
Yes. 2 is all you need. That's what the Bible tells us. All right? You're completely wrong on that. But yeah, keep going.
No, it's out in theaters too if you want to talk about it,
No, it's all good.
So, they bring Blue, that's the name of the bird, to Rio. He's having trouble adapting. He never learned to fly is one of the major things.
Yeah.
He meets the girl, and then some poachers come and kidnap them, and then they escape the poachers, and they end up chained together, and then the story sort of follows them to continue escaping the poachers who are still running after them, and get back to Linda, or get back to freedom, but except that they're chained together, and they're not getting along, except that they're destined to fall in love, because it's a cartoon, and that's how it goes.
Of course. And also animal instincts, come on, It's just...
Well, actually, there's plenty of animals that just don't want to mate with their keepers, I should say, or want them to mate with. Like, that happens with pandas all the time. They're like, mate, and the panda's like, fuck you.
Yeah, but pandas are lazy, so, it's like, mate, maybe later, give me a break.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, Rio 2 is coming to theaters this Friday, and you know what that means?
We're going back to Brazil?
Yeah, essentially.
Awesome.
That's what it is, and it also means another episode of Don't F With The Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the Big Correspondent of Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, Editor-in-Chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. For those of you who don't know, what we do at Don't F With The Original is when a sequel comes out, we review the movie that started the franchise to gauge our expectations and talk a little bit about what we expect for the next movie. And in this case, obviously, that means we're going to review Rio 1, otherwise known as Rio.
Yeah, there was no number. Because I feel it's a pretty complete story. I think they didn't add the number there saying, to be continued.
It wasn't Rio Episode 1.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is a movie that, to me, is more interesting in terms of where it comes from than what it actually is. Oh.
to mate with a macaw. That makes no sense.
Presumably that context was different.
Okay.
And then what happened is Happy Feet and a whole bunch of penguin movies and cartoons started coming out. So, you know, the studios were like, yeah, we're not doing penguin. Like, we're going to look ridiculous. We're going to be like one of a crowd. Like, it's just not, no, we're not sellouts. That's not what we're going to do.
Okay.
And so they come up with this story that's a little bit, I find a little more organic, like less goofy, less high concept, you know?
Yeah. I don't know why they said that, because sellouts make a lot of money very often, but you know.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, when you're a smaller studio and you're just doing the sellout thing, you're picking up crumbs. You can't stand out.
That's true.
So, yeah, they changed it, and what I find interesting is that he changed it to something that became much more personal to him. He said in an interview that when he rewrote the story, he based it on his own life. Sort of Blue's journey is his journey of going back to Brazil and realizing that, like, he's now a true blue American, and he sort of lost touch with his roots, and he feels like an outsider, even though he's going...
Interesting.
So, Rio, directed by Carlos Saldana, it's the story of a macaw that gets captured and transported all the way to the United States, and then gets lost and gets found by a little girl named Linda, and she grows up with him, and they become, like, they have a pet master relationship, obviously, but they, you know, what they're showing is he's found a loving home in Linda.
Yeah.
And then one day, an environmentalist, he's a zoologist, I guess?
Ornithologist.
Oh, okay, there you go. Shows up to tell her that, well, look, his species is going extinct. We have a female. I found this male. We need to bring him to Rio in Brazil so that they can mate and continue the species. He actually says that they're the only ones left, and I'm like, well, then your species is dead, because two of one species is not enough, buddy. Yeah. So, worst scientist ever.
What about all the animals on Noah's Ark, man? Okay? Don't mess.
So, anyway.
No, I understand.
So what did you think of Rio?
It was a fun movie. I liked it. You really like the birds, you know. It's not like one of those kids' movies that I really hate, where, you know, the main character has like a fatal flaw and that causes all of the problems. No, you know, the problems are caused by an outside source. Mm-hmm. You know, everything would have gone fine if not for the outside source. So, you know, and then they have to overcome that. So that's really the kind of movie I like, kind of kids' movie I like. And, you know, all the characters are pretty fun. Even the bad guys are kind of goofy, kind of fun as well. So it's a great movie for kids, and I liked it.
Yeah, no, I think all of what you say is really sort of the strengths of the movie. What I like especially about this movie is sort of a different angle on the fish out of water sort of story, because it is sort of that, but at the same time it isn't treated that way. Like, what I find intriguing is that the original concept was a penguin.
Really?
Yeah, it was going to be a penguin who ends up in Brazil.